Well, Steven Matz's return to the Cardinals starting rotation could not have gone much smoother, and Lars Nootbaar played the hero offensively to ensure the Cardinals another winning homestand. That and a look in at the Cardinals minor league system, all coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Wednesday evening, April 16th, 2025. The Cardinals capped off a very solid series win over the Houston Astros on Wednesday afternoon at Busch Stadium. I was actually there in the building as a spectator. My wife, my 2-year-old son, had a great time at the ballpark. If you were down there, like a lot of our local students were at the elementary age, lots of field trips going on down at the ballpark today. Announced attendance was over 30,000. Seems like the first time since maybe opening day that they did that. Maybe that first weekend series had over 30,000 announced on Saturday, Sunday. But if you were down there today at Busch, you know what I know, which is that it was a wonderful day at the ballpark. And you got to bear witness to the return of Steven Matz to the Cardinals starting rotation. He exceeded expectations in what he did for the Cardinals Wednesday afternoon, because we talked about it last night. While we whiffed on our predictions to potentially be seeing Gordon Graceffo or Michael McGreevy join the Cardinals in a bullpen role on Wednesday, it ended up being Matt Swanson. We'll talk about the roster move with Roddery Munoz. But we definitely expected Steven Matz to be on a pretty tight pitch count on Wednesday, given that he had only thrown something like 45 pitches in his previous outing, and obviously prior to that had been really just as needed. One inning sometimes, maybe he'd get 4 outs on another occasion. He was not necessarily stretched out in each and every outing that he pitched out of the St. Louis bullpen. So you knew it would take a little bit of ramp-up time, but the Cardinals extend him over 70 pitches because of how darn efficient Steven Matz was in this game. Had a little bit of trouble in the early going, but really locked it into cruise control thereafter. I think he gave up hits to the first couple of batters in this game. Jeremy Pena had a base hit following the leadoff hit by Jose Altuve, and then it was a ground out that scored the first run and what ended up being the only run for the Astros on the day. So those first 2 batters, base hit, and from there it was a ground out, RBI ground out, and 15 in a row retired by Steven Matz on out the door as he gets 15 outs in this game. They all come consecutively as he goes 5 innings. I believe he ended up at 72 pitches for the Cardinals, 71 pitches, and just gave up those 2 hits, didn't walk anybody, had 5 strikeouts, lowers his season ERA to 2.16, and certainly looks like he's a guy that could be a force in this starting rotation. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Cardinals play this. I saw that Katie Woo reported earlier today, this actually may have even come last night, but I saw it today, where she basically outlined the expectation that the Cardinals plan to stick with this 6-man rotation for about 3 weeks, which is not the rest of the season, right? It's more of a temporary plan, according to her reporting. And the reasoning behind that actually makes a lot of sense. When you look at the schedule, I even thought for whatever reason that the Cardinals were off tomorrow, talking about Thursday. Now it's probably today as you're listening to this podcast. But I had it in my head that it was an off day after the conclusion of the series against the Astros. And my best explanation for why I thought that is the Cardinals have a ton of Thursday off days on the schedule, and I was aware of that. They were off last Thursday. They're off April the 24th. They do play on May the 1st, but then the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th of May are all Thursday off days for the Cardinals. So a lot of those baked into the early portion of the season. I just kind of had it in my head, okay, they're probably off tomorrow, and then I had myself corrected, and I was like, oh, I got that wrong. So if I mentioned that yesterday on the podcast, I very well may have in passing. That's not true. 4-game series coming up against the Mets, 3 at Atlanta, and then the off day before returning for a weekend series at Busch on the 25th of April. That's the upcoming schedule for St. Louis. Not a lot of home dates between now and the end of the month, just those 3 against Milwaukee, and then it's against the Mets on the 2nd of May when the Cardinals are back at home for their following series at Busch. So a little bit of an odd breakdown to the schedule coming up, but it'll be a chance to watch some games on TV unless folks are traveling to New York or Atlanta. Let me know. I'll be curious to see if you've got some pictures from the ballpark or something that we can talk about on the podcast if any Cardinals fans are heading out that way and our listeners at B-Schaeff Daily. So, nevertheless, when you look at the schedule right now, this is the time that you could benefit as the Cardinals from a 6-man rotation. because you don't have the off day. You don't have any off day at all until the 24th of April. And then the next off day after that is May the 8th. So it's a little bit of a run here where you've got to be ready to go just about every day to play baseball. You don't get that breather for the bullpen, and you don't get that breather for the rotation. And at times, we talk about rolling guys every fifth day. Really, throughout a season, there are enough off days baked in for most parts of the summer that those starters get that extra day here and there, and it can be certainly valuable for those guys as you try to navigate through a long season. The Cardinals are going through the stretch right now, starting back on the 11th of April, between April 11th and May 7th. So that's almost a full month, April 11th to May 7th. Only 2 total off days, the 24th and then the 8th of May. So actually, that's just 1 off day. We're doing math live on the show. Yeah, April 11th to May 7th. The only day off is the 24th of April. So that's a tough stretch, and that's exactly the stretch that we're seeing the 6-man rotation, right? Like it plays out exactly in that duration. The game on Friday against Philadelphia was Andre Pallante, and Andre Pallante will now pitch on Thursday against the Mets. So he's obviously not the guy that started as the number 1 starter, but they're plopping Steven Matz in the middle where he fit, and now we're seeing the Cardinals roll 6. Sonny on Monday against Houston turned it back to the beginning of the rotation, and then Matz just kind of gets thrown in the middle. But since the 11th of April, we've seen now every starter play. We've seen all 6 of them have a game that was theirs, and then it rolls back on Pallante on Thursday. So they ordered it that they made sure that Steven Matz was getting an opportunity out of this stretch. So now everybody's getting that extra day. And then on the 24th of April, everybody will get even one more day. So they'll have they'll have 7 days basically between starts. There'll be 1 a week as that little turn through the rotation happens. And it's a way to be able to get this starting rotation the rest that it needs in the early going as they're ramping up. And I think we're really starting to see evidence of that ramp up. Sonny Gray with 92 pitches in his outing on Monday. Fetty got pretty deep into his game on Tuesday, throws 6 innings. And I think Steven Matz is going to be not too far off. If he goes 71 pitches on Wednesday as he did, Steven Matz can probably get up into the 80s, I would think, the next time. He was only scheduled for 60, but now that he's done 71, what's 10, 15 more? You add to that, you get him in the 80s, and one more start, he should pretty much be fully built up, you would think. But the Cardinals have been very careful about it. Like, they've been pretty meticulous. The game where Fetty had the no-hitter going, I believe 88 was where he ended up on the pitch count, and he was designed to be between 85 and 90, Oliver Marmol said. So, they're looking at these things very closely, and as they should, where you're able to make sure that your rotation during the part of the year that the most pitching injuries happen, and again, look around the league. Other teams are dealing with it. Look within the Cardinals' own organization. They're dealing with it just with their minor league ranks. We're going to do a little down on the farm update because people have been talking about it after I added the B-Schaeff Daily kind of intro music back into the podcast yesterday. Then more people said, what about down on the farm? When are we getting that back? And by the way, I'm just going to throw it on there for my guy Mark with the Hastings Layers Premium Eggs. I'm not changing the audio from that. But if anybody does, that's just a shout out to Mark. If anybody does want to get involved in a business capacity with B-Schaeff Daily, your business can be the sponsor of Down on the Farm this year. We're looking for kind of getting that re-upped if anybody is interested. And that helps the podcast too, helps me. And if people have fun with it, even better. But nevertheless, Down on the Farm update coming a little bit later. And you look around the league, other teams are dealing with pitching injuries. The Cardinals at the big league level, knock on wood, have a 6-man rotation at this point because I imagine they figured, even going back into spring training, surely somebody's going to get hurt, and then we've got our 5-man rotation, or then you've got a spot for Michael McGreevy. And none of those things have happened yet. So the way I look at it is as a good problem to have, and I think the Cardinals would agree with that. We can talk about a little speculation on what might happen if this is only going to be a 3-week runway. And once again, looking at the schedule, it makes sense that it might be, because when you get into May, you really don't want to be delaying at that point. Now that you're through April, knock on wood, everybody is healthy. You don't want to be delaying Sonny Gray an extra day every week. You don't want to be delaying. Ideally, you're feeling that way about Eric Fetty, and maybe you feel that way about Liberatore and Pallante. at a certain point, you don't want to water your rotation down any. The intriguing part of this could be, what if Steven Matz isn't your sixth best starter, but he's actually your fifth best? Or what if he's your third best? What if he continues to pitch lights out like he did on Wednesday afternoon, and you get through these 3 weeks, and the off days start to return on a regular basis for 4 Thursdays in a row, and then a subsequent Monday, June 2nd, is an off day before the Cardinals endure a stretch of, I'm trying to count the days, June 3rd to the 15th. However many days that is. 13 games in a row, 13 days, 13 games. That's where you maybe would say, hey, let's go back to a modified 6-man rotation or something. And from June the 3rd, you could carve it out all the way to July the 2nd, where the Cardinals have just one off day mixed in that month. So it's kind of strange, honestly, that they can't balance it out better. I don't envy the MLB schedule makers. I'm sure it is a difficult puzzle to put together when you've got all 30 teams and you're trying to figure out travel and everything associated, and you've got certain scheduling rules of how many times each team plays within the division, et cetera, and you're trying to space that out as much as possible. So, like I said, I don't envy it, but it is a little bit weird that they give you this ample time off in May, but then you get into June and it's like, nope, no rest for the wicked. Go out there. I think it's rest for the weary, but then it's the song that's no rest for the wicked, Cage the Elephant. Anyway, what's going to be really interesting, and I already know where most people are going to hear what I'm saying and the direction they're going to go with it, is what if Steven Matz has a couple more starts in this stretch and looks really good, and the Cardinals get to that point where they don't need 6 anymore, and more than anything, they want to have that extra arm in the bullpen. Do they move Steven Matz to the bullpen again because he showed he could be effective in that role, and he's just the guy that they're going to screw with a little bit, and he's got to be malleable because that's the name of the game? Or do they go, actually, our team's better if Steven Matz is pitching in the rotation for 5, 6, 7 innings every 5th day, which only is true if he sustains how he looked today. We have seen flashes and glimpses from Steven Matz. We haven't necessarily, over the course of his Cardinals contract, seen him do it consistently, but I think it's in there. And if he's healthy, that's really been the primary reason that we haven't always seen it with regularity, is because the health hasn't been maintained. Knock on wood, Steven Matz stays healthy. Let's just imagine for a moment that scenario. I think that Steven Matz has upside that's as high as anybody in the rotation outside of Sonny Gray. Like, Sonny Gray has Cy Young caliber within him. We've seen it. He finished second in the Cy Young in the AL the year before he came to the Cardinals. That's pretty recent to be able to just say, all right, he's got the highest upside in the rotation. I think Eric Fetty has really good upside, a little bit capped compared to Sonny. Like, I don't think Eric Fetty's going to win a Cy Young nor finish in the top 3 or 5 for one, but I think he can be a really good number 2. Like, that's his ceiling, and I think, his floor is closer to being kind of a mid to back end type of starter, but I think he slots in just fine as the Cardinals number 2 for right now. Palante, he's never going to be viewed as that, like, Cy Young guy because he's not going to miss quite enough bats. He's not going to strike as many guys out. Always going to be more reliant on pitch to contact. And when that's your game, it's just more difficult to tap into that ceiling because over the course of 25, 30 starts, can you maintain like the 2.2 ERA that he has right now? Inevitably, there's going to be a day where balls find holes and he gives up 6 or 8 or 10 hits, and that turns into 5 runs, and the ERA suffers a little bit for it. But I think on the whole, Andre Palante is out there slanging that thing, and he's pitching really well. And one thing he has when you would say, okay, he's more pitch to contact, that Miles Mikolas does not have at this stage of his career is the velocity. Palante can still get it up into the mid-90s, doesn't always sit there, but we see plenty of 94, 93 from him, and occasionally even more than that, 95 plus at times. So that would be a difference between, if I just say blanket statement pitch to contact, Palante versus Mikolas. I'm looking at Palante in that regard and saying there's a little bit more giddy up there, there's a little bit more upside. A little bit more ability to miss bats. Although Miles Mikolas in his last start did miss quite a few more bats than he did out in Boston. He had that issue in the first inning with Kyle Schwarber where a couple of pitches were called poorly that went against him, and then he threw a really, really bad pitch to Nick Castellanos. Like, eventually, the pitch that got him was a pitch that was just middle in a 2-strike count. It's kind of the thing that we've been talking and hounding him about from afar. The narrative surrounding Miles Mikolas has been the two-strike thing, don't throw a meatball, and he did to Castellanos, but he shouldn't have still been involved in that inning is the point. He should have already been back to the dugout if the umpire was doing his job. But I still put Palante in a really solid middle of a rotation. I think Liberatore, very similar to Steven Matz. Like Matz was getting it up there as well, velo-wise. We could see Libby doing that at times too, mid-90s. Two lefties that can throw hard and have some good secondary pitches to go with it. Those guys have upside of being like legit number twos. Like I hesitate to say that either are going to be an ace. And with Matz, we've seen him for, a decade or whatever it's been in MLB. We've seen some really good years from Matz. We've seen some bad ones, and we've seen some incomplete ones from him. I don't think he's a number one. Matthew Liberatore, I think, still has that level of upside. So maybe I would say Sonny number one in terms of upside. Not my prediction for like where I would slot him in, but Libby is maybe number two. Matz is just a 2B right there behind Libby in my estimation. That's where we get into this conversation of like, who do you move if Matz is pitching well? And again, hopefully this is a worthwhile conversation. Hopefully it's not a case of we talk about it and then somebody gets hurt and we go, oh, well, duh, now you're down to 5. Hopefully this is something that's relevant in the Cardinals. I think, honest to goodness, somebody could get hurt over the next week or so in the rotation, and I think they very well might just stay with the 6-man rotation and bring McGreevy right into it because it's more schedule-based as we look at it with the off days baked in than it is anything else. Like, it's also you have 6 arms that are deserving, and they're all at the big league level. Liberatore would have been the one that you could have just, if the easy choice would have been, shove him in the bullpen. We don't need to see what he is as a starter. We already know. Well, if you had made that decision as the St. Louis Cardinals, and now you see what you would have been missing, I mean, can we give the Cardinals a little bit of credit for doing the thing that made them have to be a little more creative and say, well, Steven Matz looks good in spring. Like, if they were just going through the motions, guys, that's what they would have done. They would have put Steven Matz in the rotation to begin, and Liberatore would be a 1-inning reliever, and we never really would have seen this look from him, which, again, it's not a complete finished project at this point, but he's had 3 outings where he's gone 6+ innings. That's a rarity in today's game, so you want to continue to see that and feed into that rather than just say, he's a bullpen guy, we know what he is. That's a credit to a team that, like, they could have very well and easily fed into that narrative and just kind of let that happen with Liberatore and said, well, Matz is the veteran, put him in. It's not a slight on Steven Matz's spring. He was good in the spring. Libby was better, and he's got a better long-term connection to the organization because of his contract status, that it just made sense where the Cardinals had to do it with him. And so we're seeing it from Libby. Hopefully he can continue it. That's just, time's going to tell with that. But the one name is Mikolas, right? Where I would say of all the 6 in the rotation, he's got the lowest upside in terms of I don't think he's got all-star in him at this stage in his career. I could be wrong. He could pitch to contact. He could really be a pitch maker like we saw from Wainwright later in his career, but not at the very end when he was pitching hurt. I'm talking about like the good Wainwright years prior to when it started to kind of go downhill for him. Could you find that sort of evolution from Mikolas? There was a time where everybody thought Waino was done, and he came back and gave them several really solid seasons. I don't think anybody would have said he was an ace necessarily at that time, although for the Cardinals and their rotations at the time, he maybe was. But I think there would be some merit still to that if Mikolas would be able to figure out his limitations, pitch within them, and become just a little craftier to be able to work with what he's got. That being said, the upside still, I think, in that world would be lower than the other 5, and the floor is probably lower too. So if you've got a lower ceiling and a lower floor, by which I mean more susceptible to getting beat around like you did in Boston, and have that happening on a more frequent basis, which stands to reason if your velo's lower and guys are you're not missing their bats, they're able to put the ball in play against you, your floor is susceptible to wherever those balls might land in the outfield grass on a given day. So lower floor, lower ceiling. Is he not the guy then that you would move to the bullpen? I have no idea if the Cardinals would be considerate of that. Again, the easy thing to do would probably be to move Matz because you can kind of lean back in on the notion of, well, you've already done it. What's, 2 more weeks of bullpen for you? You just had to do it. Now you do it again. You're pissing off one guy instead of multiple. I don't know why, but the connection that I make in my mind is from Big Brother, CBS's reality show that airs every summer, where the way it kind of goes is somebody, a group, a duo will go on the chopping block and everybody will have to vote someone out. So the person that stays, they're glad to be back. But then the next week happens And the next person that's in charge kind of goes, well, they were already on the block last week to be voted out, and so they're already pissed off, so I'll just put that same person up. It's easy again. I don't want to make any new enemies. Don't want to get any new blood on my hands. That's sort of the adage. In the case of the Cardinals, you could look at it and say, well, we've already got kind of Matz's blood on our hands. We might have irked him once, and, we'll just do it again rather than irk Michaelis. The Cardinals may be past that because the Cardinals of old, I don't think would have put Matz in the bullpen to begin with. They would have said, veteran status, get him in the rotation. They had an eye on the future and trying to see what they could find out about Libby. And they may have stumbled into a starter that can help them in 2026 and beyond, rather than have to go out into free agency to get replacement level like a Gibson or a Lance Lynn, guys who did a nice job, but you paid $10, $11, $12 million for those players individually. Whereas Liberatore might make $1 million and be a better upside option for your rotation. They wouldn't have found that out if they weren't operating differently. So I just want to give the Cardinals credit on the pitching side for the way that they're approaching that. And we'll see. Their next step in that evolution will be go through these 3 weeks, get to the slate in May where you start to get the off days baked back in, and you might want to dial it back to a 5-man rotation at that point. What do you do at that point if the injury situation doesn't pop up to make it an obvious choice for you? I'll be very curious, but I want to see more Steven Matz, man, after what he did today. You tell me a guy's going to give up 2 hits, no walks, and get you through 5? Yep, I'm signing up for that, especially knowing the guy was in the bullpen a few days ago. To get through 5 on the pitch count that they had designated for him, I think they let him stretch a little bit beyond it, frankly, because they saw that he was just so efficient mowing guys down. Why get in the way of that, even if you had it in mind that you were going to stop him at 60 or so pitches? He gets to 71, 44 of which were strikes, and that allowed the Cardinals and Oliver Marmol to unlock the rest of this game. They did make the decision. Rodri Munoz does get optioned after the game on Tuesday night, which is understandable because he pitched in consecutive games, and you've got this 6-man rotation happening, 7 bullpen guys instead of 8 to help cover, so at least make sure the 7 that you've got are moderately fresh, and they call up Matt Swanson. They didn't end up needing Matt Swanson to be like the extra bridge guy, though, today, because Ryan Fernandez was able to assume the 6th inning after Matz got through 5. So Fernandez, Leahy, Maton, Helsley was your 6, 7, 8, 9. Maton is settling in as the right-handed option when you talk about lefty-righty lanes. That's how Ollie Marmol views it. He's the righty lane when it's the 8th inning and you're in a hold situation. You're setting the stage up for Ryan Helsley. That's the way it looks. Maton from the right, Jojo Romero from the left. Working back from there, Fernandez is probably the guy that I would say is the backup to Maton from the right side at this point to be the 8th inning guy, or he could be then a 7th inning guy. But today the situation came up where you got Steven Matz through 5, and as Ollie Marmol is working to figure out the next look, he goes with Fernandez in the 6th. And again, I wasn't covering this game. I was not in the post-game interviews with Ollie or the clubhouse because I was there with a ticket. But you turn the lineup over in that top of the 6th inning where it's Altuve and Pena, and then Isaac Paredes. Had to face Chas McCormick, the 9-hitter, before that. But my thought with that is, okay, Fernandez is the guy you trust a little bit more than, say, the guys that would be in your middle relief category. So go with Fernandez for that tough righty lane that you expect in the 6th inning. Even though it's an earlier inning, it's not a less important inning because if you have a lesser arm take on that role, you may not get through that spot with still having the game situation that you have and having what at the time was a lead for the Cardinals because they just established it in the bottom of the 5th inning with a 3-run Lars Nootbaar home run. We'll talk about the offense here in a moment after we wrap up the conversation on the pitching from today. I just thought it was very interesting that it was Kyle Leahy for the 7th. And again, part of that is, okay, trust in Fernandez. He was sort of oscillating in that kind of Roy Croft category, but is a guy that last year we saw him be a de facto kind of backup closer. Like he elevated Ryan Fernandez did through the year relatively quickly into that circle of trust. So he gets the 6th. Normally you'd say, well, okay, then it's the middle relief guy that you don't trust as much. He gets the 7th. No, it's Kyle Leahy, who, yes, started the year as a middle relief guy. No, is not an untrusted middle relief guy. He is in the circle of trust, folks. And the way I know it is he got the 7th inning today after pitching 2 innings last night. He gave up a home run to Yordan Alvarez. Yordan Alvarez was on the bench on Wednesday for the Astros, the night after he homered against Kyle Leahy, Leahy comes in. They could decide to go with that Jordan spot at some point against Leahy if they wanted to. Say, hey, just homered against the guy. Let's try to get a spark in this thing, which didn't end up happening. I don't know if part of that was maybe Ollie Marmol trying to get them to burn Jordan Alvarez and then see if, they'd have to plug him into the field or, whatever the case would be. Or if it was just as simple as Kyle Leahy's in the circle of trust, and I don't care that it's going to make 3 out of 4 days for him to be pitching, and he threw 2 innings last night. He's the dude, and we're going to throw him out there. And Leahy did give up a ground rule double, but he got the job done in that inning. I was very impressed by Kyle Leahy, who had, he's pitching a bunch, but is really elevating, I think, into a status of this bullpen where I'm not saying he's like the backup closer. I'm not even saying he's necessarily the 8th inning guy, but in his role, Ollie Marmol has the belief that he can turn to Kyle Leahy in the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, almost no matter the circumstance, almost no matter what happened yesterday, and believe that he's going to get him the job done. And that's what happened today. So Kyle Leahy, I think an unsung hero of this game for the Cardinals as they're able to get to that bridge. Phil Maton is looking like an unbelievable signing at this point. Hope I didn't just jinx him, but he's just going out there and doing the job. His 4th hold of the season, Ryan Helsley picked up his 3rd save. Only 3 saves. Cardinals got to get some more tight wins here. Not maybe as many as they did last year when Helsley, I think for the first month and a half, it seemed like the Cardinals didn't win if Helsley wasn't pitching. And if Helsley wasn't pitching, the Cardinals didn't win. I may have said that the same way twice. But he's only got 3 saves, and I heard the saves leaderboard on KMOX coming home from the game, and it's 7. And last year, Helsley led the league. So got to get his numbers up. But that's just a product of the game situation, right? The Cardinals had a couple of extra inning games that they lost, and maybe even more than a couple at this point. And so he wasn't getting save opportunities in those games anyway. But Phil Maton has been really, really good. He's pitched already in 10 games. Maybe it doesn't feel like it, but 9 1/3 innings, 11 strikeouts. He's got 1 save and his goose eggs. 0.43 is his whip, walks plus hits per inning pitched. He's been awesome and was again today. Had a strikeout. Leahy a strikeout in his scoreless frame, as did Fernandez. And Helsley did walk a batter, but got himself a scoreless appearance and to save and lowered his season ERA to 2.57. So interesting conversation when it comes to the 6-man rotation. So far, so good. The Cardinals just continue to keep the line moving, and there's not really much else that you can say. The Cardinals, over the recent stretch, have had one of the best, if not the best, if you wanted to find some arbitrary start point, end point for this little experiment. I'm sure you could find a stretch over which you could say the Cardinals have been the best starting staff in Major League Baseball. Now, there was a week there where they very much were not and had some significant trouble, and that's why you see the ERA a little bit lower in terms of the season ranks. But now they've got it up to, sorting it by starters only, 3.91 is what it's down to, I should say. And that ranks 13th in MLB. But I'm sure if you were to take it on just a more recent stretch of things, you would find the Cardinals in much better shape. I can sort on not ESPN, but MLB. Team ERA over the last 15 days is no bueno because I think that incorporates the Boston series still. How about this? Over the last 7 days, 1.67. That's the team ERA, not the starters one. I could go through and do a little math for you, but I won't. It's getting late. Padres, by the way, 0.98 ERA as a team over their last 7 days, but the Cardinals second best in baseball team ERA, not just starters, but overall over the past week. So things are definitely improving from a pitching perspective. And now you go face a Mets lineup that's really, really good too. This week, the Astros lineup, I bet the Astros lineup ends up better than what it looks like right now, but we knew coming into this series that the Cardinals were kind of catching Houston at the right time. They haven't been able to get off the mat in terms of getting the lineup rolling just yet. Jordan Alvarez has struggled this year, but did homer yesterday. As I'm talking now, it's probably Tuesday, I should say, is when he homered. And other than that, there just isn't a lot going on right now in this lineup. Altuve's doing okay as their leadoff hitter. Pena, his numbers are down a bit. Paredes has not been anything special. And everybody else, it kind of looks like a 2024 Cardinal lineup did at the beginning of the year. Lots of guys in the 5s and 6s in terms of the OPS numbers, 500s, 600s, and some in the 300s. So that's Yanier Diaz in the 397 range. And he's relevant as well, talking about the Cardinals offense. They stole bases on this dude this series. Yainer Diaz has some of the worst metrics in baseball from the catcher position in terms of managing the running game. And it was clearly a point of emphasis for the Cardinals. When you've got Alec Burleson going out there and stealing bases on consecutive days, you know something's up. Victor Scott got one today. Brendan Donovan got one today. So some odd cast and characters over the course of this series. I think Arenado had a steal. Burleson had one. Game one, somebody else that had one that you don't really normally think of might have been Walker. Walker's got a couple on the year. I'm not 100%. But my point is, that was notable to me that they were trying to manufacture. But really, it came in the inning where no manufacture and no assembly required. Lars Nootbaar is just going to do the job. The way that they did, though, manufacture that run with the fifth inning homer did start with a little bit of small ball. Victor Scott II continues to show that the bunt hit is part of his repertoire. I don't know if anybody knows the play I'm talking about in that fifth inning, but did you see where that ball actually landed up? It was right next to the chalk line, but it wasn't on the chalk line from the video angle that I saw on replay. However, the umpire that was all over it immediately signaled as it came to rest, and the fielder for the Houston Astros picked it up, immediately signaled fair ball, and Vic was over on first base like, what can I say? Cue ball shot. It was a great bunt, but it's so crazy that you can see in slow-mo, okay, this ball is rolling. It's on the dirt. It's moving toward the grass patch that begins. The grass patch, the ball was moving and spinning so low to the ground that the grass patch actually redirects it toward foul territory. It's like you couldn't quite get it onto the lip of the grass, and if you had, maybe the pitcher would have known even quicker to try to throw him out. I don't think they would have gotten him no matter what, even if they had not tried to let it roll foul. It was just such a perfectly placed bunt. And then by a left-handed batter, too. He's out of the box as quick as a hiccup, as they say. But it was really crazy to watch that slow-motion replay. My thought on this is I believe the rule is like if the ball is not a flat object, right? It's not a cube. It's a ball. It's a sphere. So, yes, it's touching the ground and physically impacting the ground at some point in space, but its sides extend beyond where it's actually touching and making physical contact with the ground. I think the ball was, if you were looking at it from above, was hanging over the line, even if it wasn't physically touching the line. I believe the ball, if you were to draw a line, this is going to sound psychotic probably, but if you were to draw a line in space from just a vertical line, that line would have had some crossover with the chalk, which means it's a fair ball. I'm pretty sure that was the right call, even if it wasn't physically touching chalk. The ball is a sphere, not a cube. So you got to figure out the line. I'm sure there's a better word for that. The geometrist? I'm so bad at podcasting. Anyway, the geometrists out there can tell me if I'm explaining this extremely poorly or not, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Fair ball! That's what the umpire said, and I agreed with him. Great bunt by Vic, and then the base hit, Sajacy just going the other way with it to get two guys on for Nootbaar, and that was just the perfect inning because Ronald Blanco is still out there. This is a guy that's had a no-hitter before in his career and has had some rough numbers to start the year, but the Cardinals are finally getting him worn down a little bit. Like it was the perfect spot of the afternoon for Nootbaar to be able to work an at-bat and figure out a way to hit one over the fence. Freezes lawn, 3-0 Cardinals. They tack on another one in the sixth inning. A double by Sajacy into the corner ends up scoring a run. And from there, Cardinals, just had the bullpen rolling the way that they did. Houston scores on the third batter of the game, and not again, was a pretty impressive outing by Cardinal pitching, to be sure. But offensively, that fifth inning really did impress me because it was just one of those where you could have your first 4 innings or so and not basically get anything done if you're St. Louis, and you could kind of start to mail it in for the day. This year's Cardinals team doesn't do that, and we saw that in the fifth inning. Yep, get a bunt, try to make something happen. Call goes your way where umpire could have said foul. I think it was fair. I think it was the right call. But if you said foul, there's no recourse. It's not reviewable when it's inside the base bags and on the infield dirt like that. So you had to go with the umpire's call there. Benefits the Cardinals that, in my opinion, they got it right. Sajacy, just a good piece of hitting to set the pond up for Lars Nootbaar, and all the Duckies swim home on his homer into dead center. Really well-played game by the Cardinals, but it doesn't really happen without that inning to get the offensive juices flowing. 8 hits in the game. Lars Nootbaar overall just continues to be a force of nature. He goes 1 for 3 in the game, 2 walks and a homer. with those 3 RBIs. He's up to now for the season. Going to continue to update this as often as I can, especially during the portion of the year that it continues to favor me. 15 walks, 12 strikeouts. My bold prediction before opening day, Nootbaar, more walks than strikeouts this year. If I pull this one off, it will be a very impressive bold prediction. Last year, only Juan Soto and I believe Steven Kwan were the 2 that I like notable, actually full-time players that did that. It's just a product of what his plate discipline is, Lars Nootbaar, and his ability to put the ball in play. So we'll see if he ends up holding up. I mean, we're more than a tenth of the way through the season, and he's done it so far. So we'll see if he can keep that going. Contreras back in the 2-hole, 0 for 4, 2 Ks. I'd move him down. I've talked about that, but I think he's going to ultimately be just fine. You will continue to hear me as a broken record on that. Arenado's birthday. No birthday narrative as he goes over in this one. Donovan, Burleson, Jordan Walker all have 1 hit. Pozo, Victor Scott's hit was the bunt hit we talked about. Pozo had himself a hit as well. Also reached base via walk. And Scott walked 2 and then stole that base later on in the game. That was the bottom of the 8th. And so he was on base a couple of times. Instajacy, 2 for 4, had the RBI on the double. Good stuff from him. He's hitting 455 with a 1071 OPS, by the way. People are starting to wonder what happens when Mason Wynn comes back. When Mason Wynn comes back, Mason Wynn plays, but JC may still be on the team. Like, you're seeing that attrition happens. Guys get nicked and bruised and banged up, and you need an IL stint here and there. It's okay to have more good players. It makes the juggling harder for Ollie Marmol. Like, we didn't see Gorman at all today. It's just going to be the way that it is. But if the Cardinals have a deep bench because of that, that's better than they've been able to say in past years. Like, if guys that should be full-time players are on your bench, as long as the manager can find ways to mix them in and keep them sharp, I think you're a pretty good team for it. When you think back to having, a one-trick pony of Matt Carpenter, having Taylor Mott, or having Brenden, Crawford, like, this bench is a completely different dynamic for the Cardinals this year in a good way. But that kind of wraps up my thoughts on today's game, which means that, yes, we'll do it. People have been asking for it. There is some minor league stuff to talk about for sure, and not just injuries this time. So why don't we do it for the first time in 2025? Let's go down on the farm. It's time to go down on the farm. Brought to you by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs.
You'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle.
Huh? That's right. The moos have returned. The cow is back. We'll see if we have to adjust that audio at all. If we get ourselves a sponsor that wants to get involved. Again, you can hit me up anytime for that kind of stuff, and not just for Down on the Farm. Believe me, I'm always interested in trying to make this podcast as much of a priority in my life as I can, and finances does help that. So at B-Schaeff 12 on Twitter, DM me, whatever the case may be. Let's talk a little bit, though, about the Cardinals minor league system, because something happened today in Springfield. Talking about Wednesday in Springfield. And not just talking about Eshawn Henderson having another really good start. 7 strikeouts, 5 innings pitched, allowed just 1 run, 4 hits. He's now 2-0 with an 0.90 ERA on the season. No, not talking about Eshawn Henderson. I'm talking about J.J. Wetherholt. Oh, my goodness. More like J.J. whether or not it's time to get him up to Memphis already. 3 for 4. A home run. 4 RBIs. 3 runs scored. Oh, he also reached base via walk. He was on base 4 times. OPS up to 941. Batting average up to 341 for J.J. Wetherholt in Springfield. Yeah, I think it might have been the right decision. I think it might have been the right call for the Cardinals to have him skip Peoria. And you know what? I've always maintained that this summer was going to be about J.J. Wetherholt just kind of checking off the boxes. If they had sent him to Peoria, which was kind of my expectation, again, glad they didn't. A lot of Cardinals fans that thought he should have been in the big leagues to begin the year, I'm sure, are glad that they didn't, because this expedites his process a little bit more. And once they decided, hey, Springfield was going to be his starting spot, that's where I shifted my tune to, you could see a J.J. Wetherholt debut in 2025. It's not impossible that would happen a la Mason Wynn, where he came up at the very end of the previous season, got fewer than 130 at-bats to make sure that, and he was on the roster, a number of days that made sure he would be rookie eligible the following season. Because you still, if you have the guy eligible and he's on the roster from day one, has the service time, you're not gaming the service time the following season, and he wins Rookie of the Year that year, you get a draft pick the following MLB draft. So they maintained that with Mason Wynn. Now, Mason Wynn obviously didn't win Rookie of the Year last year, but it was still a worthwhile way to handle it. By JJ starting in Springfield, I thought that became a possibility. Just kind of like a very bitter end kind of cup of coffee for Wetherholt. We'll see, is what I'm going to say right now. Like if if April ends and he's got a 950 OPS in Springfield like he does right now, he can just go to Memphis. Like you don't need to wait, right? And I want to see him go to Memphis. I don't think he needs to skip Memphis. Like you can think back to Jordan Walker. He skipped Memphis at first, and then what has happened? He spent time the last 2 years in Memphis because, maybe they tried to jump the shark on that one, jump the gun a little bit. With Wetherholt, let's see this Springfield thing play out. But I think if you want to get to see him, if you're a Springfield resident or you live in Southwest Missouri, you might want to get to a game. Like, it's possible he's not there forever this year, Now, it's only 41 at-bats so far, but now that the power is starting to come in, it's going to be interesting to see how long he's going to stay there. That's just my thought. Slugging over 512. It's 10 games. It's a small sample, but I think the fact that they brought him to Springfield right away, that expedited the process already. Before, I would have said, okay, he'll have to slog through Peoria for a month, and then they'll bring him to AA. And then by late summer, he can maybe get that promotion earned to AAA. But by starting him in AA, it expedites the whole thing. He can be to AAA before June 1st, and maybe sooner than that. If they just say, why wait? If he's just crushing it down there, they might expedite it even further. So I'm not going to predict a debut this year, but it's coming into focus more as a possibility. The thing that's still hard is like, well, where does he play when he gets here? His positional flexibility, like, are they going to start moving him around more to open up the possibility that he comes up and plays something other than shortstop? Will we see time of him in the outfield if they're trying to? I mean, Cardinals have a crowded outfield as it is, but like, which guys get injured between now and August could definitely play a factor. Where if there's an injury that happens and you go, now wait a minute, we got to figure this out. Maybe JJ Wetherholt becomes an option. I don't think it's going to happen sooner than later, but later in the year, if he keeps playing like this, 940 OPS in AA means something. And like, what if he has this kind of stretch and then does get called up to AAA in the next month or so and starts raking there? And then let's say, Mason Wynn has another back spasm thing. And the Cardinals are 3 games above 500. And they're like, what if this kid can help us win now? Like, I'm not predicting any of this, but it's interesting and kind of fun to think about. So, and look, the Cardinals fans who would say, well, Brenden, I told you all spring training he was this good. I told you he was good too. I also said I felt like understandable to have him show it at these levels because that's why those minor league levels exist. Totally got it when they said, Peoria, don't need it. Okay, great. Let's see him in Springfield. He's passing that test. Now you're going to hear me say, all right, move him up. Right? Like, if it looks like this at the end of April, just move him up and keep going from there until there's no level higher than the one that he's at, right? So I know people are going to be excited about J.J. Wetherholt, rightfully so. I had no problem with the Cardinals not just vaulting him onto the big league roster as a result of, a spring training where he actually in spring didn't have great numbers. But that's not indicative of the player that he is. He's got a chance to dominate AA and earn himself that promotion in pretty short order. So really exciting to see him doing what he's doing down there. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking about J.J. Wetherholt's big night in Springfield. And for Memphis, I feel like it's notable to mention the Memphis Redbirds as well. Pitching-wise, Michael McGreevy, decent outing. Gave up a homer, had a 5-inning, 3-run allowance, 4 hits, did walk 1 batter, but only 1. I'll take that. 5 strikeouts. So, ho-hum, very standard outing. Continuing to see him. Chris Roycroft did pitch and get the win for the Memphis Redbirds. Gave up a run, but saw some videos floating around on Twitter of some better-looking sinkers from him. So that's good to see, but did give up a run in an inning of work and walked the batter. Ryan Ludus got the save and a 6-4 win for Memphis. He's got a 5.4 ERA, but I reckon we'll see him at some point this year in St. Louis too. So Nothing really major to report offensively. It seems like most everybody in the lineup had a hit or two for Memphis, but no real big numbers jumping off the page just yet from that level. But we'll keep you posted as that changes. You've got Barrero in there. He was a third baseman. He could be somebody the Cardinals use at some point down the road. Hellman played shortstop. Jimmy Crooks doing the catching. Fermin led off at second base. It's not like a prospect-laden lineup, but there's a lot of guys in AAA at this point that we could see make a cameo in St. Louis at some time or another this year. That, though, is going to do it for Down on the Farm, and it's going to do it for this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Thank you guys so much for listening, for supporting. Check out the YouTube membership links in the video description below, and join the free Discord if you're interested in some community conversation with Cardinals fans. That's all going down on Discord, in the B-Schaeff Daily Discord every day. Thank you guys again so much for listening. Appreciate it every single time you do it, and I'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.